It's 6:47 a.m. on a Thursday. A customs broker in Long Beach is staring at her inbox, watching tariff codes rewrite themselves in real time. Half of everything she filed yesterday, invalidated. 3,000 miles away in Washington, 6 Supreme Court justices had just redrawn the map of American trade law, and your wallet is about to feel the tremors. I'm your host, and this is Money Moves Daily. Today, a constitutional earthquake in trade policy and what it actually means for your money. On February 20th, 2026, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that the president cannot impose tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Full stop. That single decision invalidated roughly half of all U.S. customs duties that had been collected since early 2025. We're talking about $165 billion. Billion with a B. But here's the thing nobody's talking about. Prices probably won't drop as much as you'd hope. And there's a ticking clock you need to know about. Let's back up. The story starts with a toy company in Illinois called Learning Resources. They make educational toys, counting bears, magnetic letters, that kind of thing. Most of their products are made in China. When IEEPA tariffs hit, their import costs exploded. So they did something unusual. They sued. Their argument was elegant in its simplicity. Tariffs are taxes. And under Article 1 of the Constitution, only Congress can levy taxes. The president overstepped. The Supreme Court agreed. The majority opinion called tariffs, quote, very clearly a branch of the taxing power reserved for Congress, not the executive branch. Congress. This wasn't close, 6 justices to 3. And that coalition was surprising, conservatives and liberals agreeing that executive power had stretched too far. Now, IEEPA was never designed for trade policy. It was a 1977 law meant to handle genuine national emergencies, freezing foreign assets, blocking transactions with hostile nations. Presidents from both parties had used it sparingly for decades. But starting in 2025, IEEPA became the primary vehicle for sweeping tariff policy. And the court said, that's not what this law does. By the time of the ruling, IEEPA tariffs had generated approximately $165 billion in customs revenue. All of it now legally questionable. The Yale Budget Lab estimates refund exposure could reach $175 billion. That's money importers paid and might now get back. But here's where it gets complicated. The administration didn't just accept defeat. Within hours of the ruling, they pivoted to a different law entirely. They invoked Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, a law that lets the president impose temporary tariffs during balance of payments crises. Key word there, temporary. Section 122 tariffs expire automatically after 150 days unless Congress extends them. Do the math, that's July 24th, 2026. Mark your calendar. The replacement tariffs started at 10% on February 20th. By the next day, they've been raised to 15%, and they now apply to roughly $1.2 trillion in annual imports. That's 34% of everything America imports. Cars, electronics, clothing, furniture. If it crosses a border, there's a decent chance this affects it. So what does this actually mean for your wallet? Let's talk real numbers. The Yale Budget Lab calculates that the temporary tariff regime will increase consumer prices by about 0.6% in the short run. That translates to roughly $800 per household. Now compare that to where we were before the ruling. All the 2025 tariffs combined had raised effective tariff rates by nearly 20 percentage points. Consumer prices were up 2.3%. So yes, prices should be lower than they would have been, but lower than the worst-case scenario isn't the same as actually going down. Here's the uncomfortable truth that economists keep pointing out. Businesses don't automatically pass savings to consumers. They protect margins first. NCP analysts noted that as uncertainty rises, businesses are likely to adopt more cautious stances on investments and pricing. Translation: they're hedging their bets. Think about it from a retailer's perspective. They raised prices last year when tariffs hit. Customers adjusted. Why lower them now if people are still buying? The July 24th expiration date creates another problem. Nobody knows what comes next. Congress could extend the tariffs. They could let them lapse. They could do something completely different. And that uncertainty? It's expensive. Businesses can't plan. Importers can't commit to long-term contracts. The whole supply chain is holding its breath. The Peterson Institute points out that this ruling doesn't eliminate all tariffs. Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum, still standing. Those were authorized under a different statute entirely. And China-specific tariffs from 2018 and 2019, imposed under Section 301 for intellectual property violations, those remain in place too. Different legal foundation, different outcome. So we're in this strange middle ground. Some tariffs gone, some still here. A 150-day countdown on the replacements, and a Congress that hasn't shown its hand. So what should you actually do with this information? Let's get practical. First, if you're planning a major purchase of imported goods, a car, appliances, electronics, you might want to watch that July deadline. If tariffs lapse without congressional action, prices on those goods could soften. Not a guarantee. Remember, businesses protect margins, but it's a possibility worth considering. Second, and this matters if you have a portfolio, check your exposure to import-dependent companies. Retailers and manufacturers with significant overseas supply chains face real pricing uncertainty right now. The refund question is fascinating for investors. If companies recover some of that $175 billion in previously paid tariffs, that's a direct boost to earnings. Now, I want to be careful here. Your situation is specific to you. Your risk tolerance, your timeline, your tax situation, all of that changes the calculation. Talk to your advisor. The political dynamics here are genuinely unusual. Some conservatives who supported the original tariffs are frustrated by a court limiting executive power. Some progressives who oppose the tariffs are uncomfortable defending expanded executive authority. Strange bedfellows everywhere you look, and that makes predicting what Congress does next genuinely difficult. According to the Tax Foundation, the average American household was paying approximately $3,900 more per year because of all 2025 tariff policies combined. The IEEPA ruling knocks out a chunk of that, but not all of it, and the Section 122 replacements add some back. It's a shell game with real money. If you're thinking about timing major purchases around the July expiration, consider that businesses are thinking the same thing. There might be sales. There might be stockpiling. Markets tend to front-run deadlines. For your investment portfolio, one approach is to look at companies with strong domestic supply chains. They're relatively insulated from this tariff chaos. That's not advice, just a framework to consider. The honest answer is that nobody knows exactly how this plays out. The Supreme Court drew a constitutional line. But implementation is messy. Recovery is uncertain. And politics intervenes. What we know for certain is this: IEEPA tariffs are dead. Section 122 tariffs are temporary, and July 24, 2026 is a date circled on every trade lawyer's calendar in America. The importers who sued, Learning Resources and others, they're celebrating tonight. But the celebration might be short-lived if Congress acts to extend or formalize new tariffs. My suggestion? Don't make dramatic moves based on this ruling alone. It's significant, historically significant, but it's one data point in a very fluid situation. Keep an eye on congressional hearings about trade policy over the next few months. That'll tell you which way the wind is blowing before July hits. Here's what I keep coming back to. Tariffs are never just about trade. They're about power, who has it, who exercises it, and what happens when courts push back. This ruling says the president can't tax imports unilaterally, no matter what emergency he declares. That's a constitutional principle that will outlast any trade war. And for your immediate financial planning, the Peterson Institute notes that the ruling changes the legal framework, but short-term price impacts depend heavily on how businesses respond, and that's still playing out. If this kind of analysis helps you make sense of what's happening with your money, consider subscribing. We break down these complex policy shifts every week. One framework I find useful: separate what you can control from what you can't. You can't control Supreme Court rulings or congressional votes. You can control your portfolio allocation and purchase timing. The constitutional scholars will debate this case for decades. Learning Resources versus Trump, a toy company that changed American trade law. Sometimes the system works in unexpected ways. But you've got decisions to make right now. A car to maybe buy, a portfolio to maybe rebalance, a savings goal that doesn't wait for legal clarity. So here's the bottom line. Tariffs on roughly half of imports are now legally invalid. Replacement tariffs expire in about 5 months. And prices might ease, but don't bet your budget on it. Plan for a range of outcomes. Maybe tariffs end entirely. Maybe they get extended. Maybe Congress does something nobody's predicting. Your financial plan should be robust enough to handle any of those scenarios. That's the Money Moves breakdown on the IEP ruling. Constitutional law meets consumer prices meets investment strategy. It's complicated, but now you've got the framework. Remember, this is educational content, not financial advice. Your situation is unique. Before making any investment decisions, talk to a qualified financial advisor who knows your circumstances. I'm your host. This has been Money Moves Daily. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.